Driving through City Island on a rainy day, it's easy to see what residents are talking about. Orchard Beach Drive and City Island Road, the two primary routes that lead people off City Island through Pelham Bay Park, are flooding. And today, it's just drizzling.
If our roadways flood, or get really pools of water where you've got to, swerve and everything, when it is, no-name storms, like Stormy Tuesday, how are we going to be prepared for what happens going forward into the future?
That's John Doyle. He's a 30-year City Island resident, one of the Democratic district leaders for the 82nd Assembly District, and one of the founders of City Island Rising, a nonprofit organization that strives to improve the quality of life on City Island. Doyle says these storms and the resulting flooding are becoming more common. Fernando Tirado, the director of new initiatives in the Bronx for the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, agrees. He says that since Sandy, superstorms just keep coming.
They're supposed to be every 25, 50 years, and it just seems to be happening with greater occurrence. How do you protect your neighbors? How do you protect your family? How do you protect yourself if you need to get out of a situation?
Tirado helped the city navigate Hurricane Sandy recovery, and he wants disaster preparedness programs to be proactive instead of reactive.
Social cohesion and community connections are an integral part of disaster preparation. If people don't have those resources to connect to during a disaster, they will end up often worse off after a disaster, and it'll take them longer to recover.
While people often think of disaster preparation as being infrastructure-focused, Fernando Tirado explains that cities should have all sorts of tools in their arsenal.
Resiliency is not just about buildings and roads and bridges. Resiliency is first and foremost people. People need to become resilient.
And this means asking some tough questions.
What were the conditions that made you vulnerable to a disaster in the first place? How does your community or your built environment play a role in that? And what can you do to improve your own personal resiliency as well as the resiliency of your community?
John Doyle, who you heard from at the top, he's also asking these tough questions. And he thinks that the flooding of hurricane evacuation routes out of City Island is one of the primary sources of vulnerability.
We've identified all the problem drainage spots. We did a walking tour with the mayor's office, and our elected officials sent representatives, and the community board was there. We brought photos. I have over 1,000 flooding photos.
Even with the photos, fellow City Island Rising board member David Diaz says progress has been hard to come by. He explained to me that the cluster of city agencies just adds confusion. I reached out to both the Department of Parks and the Department of Transportation to see who's responsible for road maintenance in Pelham Bay Park. They both referred me to each other.
It's neglect, frankly, at a city level.
That's John Doyle again.
How many wake-up calls can our government be given?
If the problem isn't solved, Doyle thinks that residents of City Island could be in danger.
And even though these roadways flood, again, City Island, 4,500 people, these are the roadways we're going to have to travel on if we're expected to leave in the site of an emergency, and we're a Zone 1 evacuation area.
And it isn't just the flooding that poses a problem.
There's only one way on or off the island, and there's no emergency provision like a ferry service that goes to City Island to help people get off the island if they need to. That didn't exist, and that still doesn't exist.
That bridge, the City Island Bridge, the only way on or off the island, that actually closed during Hurricane Sandy.
What if a disaster happens on City Island on a summer weekend when, the population is like 3 or 4 times that of the residents?
With the peak of hurricane season marked in mid-August, this is a pressing question for residents, tourists, and the city.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
For WFUV News, I'm Meghan Offtermatt.